put it on this piece of cane. Let's just stick this together nice and tight, and we're gonna let that dry overnight. Phenomenal glue. Put on my weight. Yanked it out of the vise. So I mean, as you can see, that stuff's in there really, really tight. We're gonna do a really concise and quick video on making hide glue, more specifically sinew glue. Hey guys, Ryan Gill here with Hunt Primitive, where we entertain, educate, and inspire. And on this channel, we typically do either primitive build or hunting videos, just like this one. So if it's your first time to the channel, do please consider subscribing. We're gonna make this video really quick and easy and get you on your way to making your own hide or sinew glue. It's a really simple and easy process that you can quite literally just do in a metal pot on your stovetop. But to truly appreciate where animal-based glues came from, you must really understand the importance of primitive pottery. And that's why in our previous video, in which I'll drop a link down in the description for you, we talked about making the primitive pottery. Because in all honesty, the toughest part about making animal-based glue in early times is actually the pottery. Otherwise, it's an incredibly simple concept that really anybody can do. But there is a huge learning curve in being able to make the animal-based glue from either a metal pot on the cook stove and then transitioning into making your own pottery and making everything from scratch. Keep in mind also that when you're using the primitive pottery, it's really important to use a good clay vessel that does not leak or weep. Because if you are using a pot that has a crack in it and you are continuing to add water to it and the water is running out, it is also taking your glue with it, and you will spend a couple hours really simmering water, and then at the end of it you won't have any glue or very, very little. So that is why the most difficult part about making true primitive animal glue is the vessel that you make it in. So in a much earlier video, I showed breaking down a deer with a stone knife. And in that video, I specifically talked about harvesting a lot of sinew off that animal, not just for making bowstrings or binding arrows, arrowheads, or fletching or any of that kind of stuff, but also saving all the little short pieces, because that's what we're going to make the glue out of. And so in my clay pot, I have all manner of scraps of sinew that I save. Every little remnant that's left over from all the binding arrowheads and fletchings, all the way down to even stuff like this, which is little cut-off pieces from the sinew bowstring. So all that stuff has a tremendous amount of value, and that's why I save it. And why do I prefer sinew? Because you can actually get more glue out of a smaller amount of sinew than you can with hide. So we commonly know it as hide glue, but realistically it's just animal-based glue. But the sinew is what I prefer. You can take a very small pot like this, render this down, take the sinew out, and then condense that liquid, and you will have a fair amount of glue that will last you quite a while. So that's really just about all you need to know at this point. So now we'll just go ahead and make the glue for you. So we're going to take this bowl that's filled with sinew, and I'm going to fill it with water, not to the top because I don't want to boil it over. And then we will build a fire, and we do not want this to boil. We want it to just slow simmer. So we don't even put the pot on the fire on the coals. We put it very close to it, so it just gets a lot of heat on one side, and it'll simmer. Every once in a while we might come in here and stir that a little bit, but basically all we're going to let it do is simmer, not boil, simmer for several hours. You're just slow cooking the natural glues that are already in the sinew. We're slow cooking them out. And occasionally you have to add a little bit more water to the pot, but after a few hours, you really just take a couple sticks and flick out all the sinew remnants and then let it cool all by itself. You don't want to take all the liquid out of the pot because you need to leave some to still evaporate off. And this is the part where you can either add a little bit more water to it later, or you can evaporate more off as you need to. But the glue that is still at the bottom of the pot is still very runny and liquefied. So it's important not to boil all the liquid out of the pot, because then you'll just burn the glue. You must leave that liquid. Some of it will evaporate off, but then it will also turn to a gelatin. So once it's completely cool, then you really know what the consistency of your glue is. And really the best part about this glue is it's got a great shelf life. So once you're done using it, you can just let it naturally dry within the pot, and when you're ready to use it again, you add just a teeny tiny bit of water and you warm it back up, you stir it, and then you're ready to use it again the next time. All right, now this glue is really, it's okay to use as is, but we're going to learn a little bit more about it once it actually sets up and stiffens overnight. But what we can do is take some of this, put it on this piece of cane, and we're going to marry these two together. I want to make sure I get a good coating in there. It looks like it'll be good. And then let's just stick this together nice and tight, and we're going to let that dry overnight. Then we'll just be able to kind of test that in the morning, and then we'll also be able to look at this and see what our consistency is really looking like. If we need to add a little bit more water before we use it again, or if it's really good the way it is. But as it dries out, obviously we can just reconstitute it and reheat it and continue to reuse this. All right, well, it's the next morning. I'll show you this up close in a second, but you might be able to see it from here. So this pretty much just turns into gelatin as it dries, and then it'll continue to dry out over a period of time, and at this stage all you'd have to do is reheat it, which would loosen it up and you could use it. As it dries out more and more, you just add a little bit of water to it, so you just have to experiment with it a little bit. But this is what we glued together yesterday, left it sit overnight. I certainly can't pull it apart, but to kind of give you a visual idea, I'll have to actually clamp this down to show this to you. Pretty hard. And then this side with a pair of pliers. That's pretty much all my weight yanking on it. Yanked it out of the vise. So I mean, as you can see, that stuff's in there really, really tight. It is a phenomenal glue. Put on my weight to really hold that thing on there. It ain't coming out, I can tell you that much. You can see how this is really just kind of a gel at this point. It flexes. You can break it up and kind of give you a look at it. But that really shows you not only the potential of animal glues, but also it's important to early people, especially in primitive archery. And I don't believe that it would have ever really found its way into true fashion until pottery and good pottery came along as a way to make it. Because you can't just rock boil this stuff and create it. It takes a long burn down. And I don't even know if a big shell would be up for it, but maybe a stone bowl might be. I'm not exactly sure, but I guarantee you when pottery became really important to people, so did animal glue. And why it is so important is this is a demonstration on how we fill the end of the arrows. So this way we can taper the shaft down, and I've talked about this at great detail in other videos. But when we put a stone point on here, we want a very, very smooth transition. So we stuff the empty internodal chambers with a smaller diameter piece of cane, and we need a really good glue that's going to hold that in. So that way we can taper the shaft down to the stone point so we can get really, really good penetration. And that stuff too, as I said in other videos, but even in my book, The Secrets and Science of Primitive Archery, really talked about at great depth in there the importance of doing that. Not only how to make the hide glue and all the ins and outs of that kind of stuff, but the application of why it's so important on arrows for penetration, especially when you're hunting really big animals like the bison, but obviously even for hunting stuff like deer or bear or hogs. Alright guys, thanks for following along. Hopefully we taught you quite a bit about hide glue and the importance of primitive pottery. And make sure you're following along with us in the future, because we'll show you the application of using that hide glue more in detail as we move forward with other primitive builds. So thanks for following along, and we'll catch you on that next adventure.